Hello East Brunswick, Mr. Tippin here. Today we are going to be talking about expand and trade subtraction. This lesson will have three parts. First, we're going to talk about making a number using base 10 blocks. Then we will subtract using base 10 blocks. And finally, we will connect our base 10 block subtraction to our new expand and trade method. And it's pretty cool. How many ways can you show 221 using base 10 blocks? I'd like for you to take a minute to pause the video and see if you can come up with at least 2 ways to make the number 221 using base 10 blocks. And then I'll share with you some of the ways that I came up with. One way to make 221 using base 10 blocks is to use 2 flats, which have 100 squares in each, 2 longs, which have 10 in each, and 1 cube. So here we have 100, 200, 110, 2 tens, so 220, and then 1 cube, 221. Another way to make 221 is to think of it like this, with 1 flat, 12 longs, and 1 cube, which is 100, 12 tens, and 1 1. And we got here by taking the second flat and turning it into 10 longs. So the value is still 221, it's just represented in a different way. It's been expanded differently. A third way to show 221 would be to keep the 2 flats, but to take one of the longs and break it up into 10 cubes, or to 10 ones, just like you see here. These are 3 different ways to make the number 221 using base 10 blocks. You might have had something different, and that's okay. There are many ways to make 221 using base 10 blocks. These are just a few. Now that we've revisited making a number with base 10 blocks, let's use those base 10 blocks to help us do some subtraction. There are 2 ways to do subtraction with base 10 blocks. One is with no regrouping, and the second way is with some regrouping. And we'll talk about those in turn. Let's start with no regrouping. Here, we're going to practice subtracting longs and cubes without regrouping. The number sentence we're going to look at is 65 minus 31 equals an unknown. First, I've started by building the number 65 using longs and cubes. I have 6 longs and 5 cubes. When I look at the number sentence, 65 minus 31, I see I'm removing 31. The 3 in the number 31 represents 3 tens. So I'm going to remove 3 longs, which have 10 cubes in each. Now I need to remove 1 cube, or 1. I've removed 3 longs and 1 cube, or 31. So what I have remaining are 3 longs and 4 cubes. 65 minus 31 is equal to 34. Now let's look at some questions that require regrouping. This number model is 53 minus 37, and I've started off by building the number 53, represented with 5 longs and 3 cubes. To subtract 37 from 53, I first need to remove 3 longs, because in the number 37 there are 3 tens. But now, if I wanted to remove 7 cubes, I'm looking at my picture and I see that there are only 3. Well, I know that if I have 3 cubes, I can't remove 7 from those 3. So I'm going to need to make a trade. I can take one of the longs that I have remaining and trade that in for 10 cubes. So now, instead of having 2 longs and 3 cubes, now I have 1 long and 13 cubes. Now I can remove 7 cubes. And what remains is 1 long and 6 cubes, or 1 10 and 6 ones, which we represent as the number 16. So 53 minus 37 is 16. Let's look at another subtraction problem that requires regrouping using base 10 blocks. Here we have the number sentence 114 minus 36. I'm going to start by removing 3 longs. However, I only have 1 long represented here. So what will I need to do in order to remove 3 longs? I'm going to need to make a trade. I'm going to take my flat and turn it into 10 longs. The value is the same. There are still 100 cubes in my 10 longs, but now if I need to remove 3 longs, I have enough to do that. Now I need to subtract 6 cubes, but there are only 4 cubes here. I will need to make a trade, but this time I'm going to trade a long for 10 cubes. So if I want to remove 6 cubes, I can do that now. What I have remaining are 7 longs, or 70, and 8 cubes. So I have 70 and 8, which we represent as 78. Okay, we've made a number using base 10 blocks, we've subtracted using base 10 blocks, and now we're going to explore this new idea called expand and trade subtraction. Expand and trade subtraction uses place value to help us regroup. Let me show you what I mean. In the number model 84 minus 36, you might notice that I have written this in a different way than before. I have stacked up my numbers on top of each other. And I'm careful to make sure that the numbers that are in the ones place are right on top of each other, and the numbers that are in the tens place are right on top of each other. If you have graph paper at home, that's a great tool to use to help you line up your numbers as you get started with this practice. One thing we can do when we think of these numbers is we can expand them, just like we did with our base 10 blocks, but this time using numbers. 84 is the same thing as 8 tens, or 80, and 4 ones. 36 is the same thing as 3 tens and 6 ones, or 30 plus 6. To start using the expand and trade, I'm going to start in the ones place. 4 minus 6. Well, I know that if I have 4 of something, if I remove 6, I'll go into the negative numbers. If I have 4 fingers up and I try to remove 6, I don't have enough fingers to remove. So 4 minus 6 won't work here. It'll take me into the negative numbers, which we're not thinking about right now. But what I can do, just like we did with the base 10 blocks, is I can make a trade. So I only have 4 ones. I need to take one of my tens and move it over into the ones place. So now I have 7 tens, or 70, and 14 ones. 14 minus 6 I can do. I know that 6 plus 8 is 14, so 14 minus 6 is 8. Now I'm going to look into the tens place. I have 70 minus 30. I'm going to count up from 30 to get to 70 to help me figure out the difference between those two numbers. I'm going to start at 30 and count up. 30, 110 is 40, 50, 60, 70. I counted 4 tens from 30. So 70 minus 30 is 40. Now I can take these differences and add them together. 40 plus 8, well, we represent that as the number 48. Let's look at another one. 143 minus 65. We're going to start in the same way. I'm looking at the number 143 and I'm trying to think, how could I write that number in expanded form? How would you do it? Here was my thinking. I know in the number 143 there is 1 100, 4 tens, or 40, and 3 ones. 143 can be written as 100 plus 40 plus 3. The number 65, how would you write the number 65 in expanded form? Here was my thinking. There are 6 tens and 5 ones. So, 60 plus 5. Let's start over in the ones place. 3 minus 5. 5 is greater than 3, so I can't remove 5 from 3. So let's make a trade. We'll take a 10 from 40 and move it over into the ones place. 10 and 3 makes 13. So now 13 minus 5. I know 5 and 5 makes 10, and then 3 more makes 13. So 13 minus 5 is 8. Now let's look over into the tens place. 30 minus 60. I have the same issue that I had a moment ago. 60 is greater than 30, so I can't remove 60 from 30. I'll need to make another trade. This time, I'm going to take 100 from the 100s place and move it over into the tens place. So now I have 130 minus 60 is 70. So we have 70 plus 8 as our difference. 70 plus 8 is the same thing as 78. Today, we thought a little bit about subtracting using base 10 blocks and then connecting that idea to using place value in our expand and trade subtraction method. Here are a couple questions you can try on your own. 124 minus 19, 352 minus 75, and 114 minus 38. You can see around the circle there are 3 numbers floating around. Each of those is an answer to one of these questions to help you check your work. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and until next time, happy subtracting.